In this lecture, we're just going to briefly discuss some specific details about your final essay prompt. I just want to go over this in a little more detail to make sure some points are clear because this is a very large portion of your grade. For most classes, this is going to be the major grade in the semester. So what you're going to do in this essay is going to be different from the first essay you did, which the first essay was the bias paper, which was more of a personal reflection. This essay is going to be a critical analysis, meaning that it is formal in its writing, that it should not be written in first or second person. It is not a personal response. You're going to be creating a thesis, making a claim, and then you're going to use your evidence, your sources to support that claim. Be sure to look at the prompt itself and the syllabus for the specific due dates. There will be 2 different due dates because you must have your sources approved by me, and that will be in an upcoming discussion board post, and it'll be worth, I believe, about 20 points, and then the final grade itself. Now, the final paper will be due the last week of class, because remember, for this class, we don't have a final exam. This pretty much is your final exam. So be sure to check the prompt and Blackboard for specific due dates. So what you're going to do in this essay, in a separate document in MLA format, which includes type, 12-point font, double spaced, in-text citations, and works cited, and so on, in 4 to 5 pages, what you're going to do is you're going to think about everything we've talked about this semester, and you're going to analyze how a specific culture of America has been shaped or influenced by the United States Supreme Court. Focus on the experience on one of the groups we have talked about this semester. So African American, Japanese American, Hispanic Americans, or LGBTQ community. If you have another cultural group that you really want to talk about, you can email me and we can discuss it. The reason why I want you to stick to the ones we've talked about is because I want you to use the Supreme Court cases we have already used in class. I don't want you having to go out and research those cases on your own. But if there's something you're really passionate about, send me an email, we'll figure it out. So in this paper, you must use a close reading of at least one court case, one piece of art, and one piece of literature. So there's a minimum of 3 different sources here. And you're going to use the court case, the piece of art, and the piece of literature to help support your claim. Again, this is a critical analysis. This is not a history paper. So your paper should have a clear, well-defined thesis, and then you're going to use your sources to support this. So if you choose African American culture, I do not want to report on slavery. That's not what this is. You're going to make some sort of claim about how the Supreme Court has influenced the African American culture. And again, that right there is not an adequate thesis. That is, if you just say, well, the Supreme Court has influenced African American culture, that is way too broad. You need to be very specific in your claim. And now this doesn't have to be a positive claim. You don't have to say they've positively affected the culture. You can make claims that the Supreme Court has negatively affected cultures. That's up to you. Again, in this, I want to hear your voice. It's your claim and how you support it. I don't want to see that you can go out and research what somebody else has said about how the Supreme Court influences this. However, remember, it is an academic writing, so it should be in the neutral third person, he, she, it. You should not be doing I think, I feel, I believe, because that is a personal response. This is not a personal response paper. You are welcome to send me your proposed thesis. I actually highly recommend you do this to be sure you're on the right track, because if your thesis is too broad, if it's not specifically covering the topic, your entire paper is going to be off, and this is the major grade for this. So again, I highly recommend you send me your thesis. So the cases you may use for this paper are Dred Scott, Plessy versus Ferguson, Brown versus the Board of Education, Hirabachi versus United States, Korematsu versus United States, Regents versus Bakke, Gratz and Grutter, you must use those 2 together, Bowers v. Hardwick, Boy Scouts of America v. Dale, and United States v. Windsor. Now, I believe we do discuss some of the more recent cases, the Oberfield case in regard to LGBTQ rights. If you want to use that case also, that is acceptable. Now, I want you to use one of these cases again, as I've already said, because I don't want you to have to go out and research Supreme Court cases. However, you are going to choose your own literature and your own work of art. But again, these have to be approved by me, and that'll be in an upcoming discussion board post. Any deviations, once these get approved by me, any deviations from this on the final paper, without my permission, you will result in a 0 in the assignment. Now, when we talk about artworks, this includes, but it's not limited to, photographs, paintings, films, music, sculpture, architecture, monuments, screen printings, posters, and various other forms of artistic expression. Now, you must have full bibliographical information for the artwork you choose. Don't just Google African American art, find something and say, oh, I like this. You have to find out who created it, when it was created, what it's made of, the year it was made, all of that information. You may use artwork we have discussed in class. For example, when we looked at the African American section, you watched the film For Little Girls. That would work as an artwork. When we talked about Manzanar, the photographs by Ansel Adams and Dorothea Lange, those are acceptable forms of artwork. But again, you are not limited to just the ones we have discussed in class. You may go out and look and research and find your own. Now again, same thing with the work of literature. Works of literature you will find on your own, and this includes any piece of written work that is creative in nature, meaning plays, poems, short stories, memoirs, novels, letters, and so on. Sources such as our textbook, Peter Iron's A People's History of the Supreme Court, are not acceptable. These are more utilitarian in nature. These are research texts. The piece of literature you need to use for your paper needs to be creative in nature. So if it's something from a encyclopedia or from a research text, that is not going to be acceptable. It must be creative in nature. And again, you must have full bibliographical information on the source you're going to use. Now, again, you may use artwork and literature we've discussed in class. However, these sources still need to be approved in the upcoming discussion board post. Remember, you must use correct MLA format, and you must cite all of your sources. Now, your works cited page does not count as one of your 4 or 5 pages. Any papers that are not in MLA format for this paper and not submitted to Blackboard obviously will not be graded. You will get a 0. Plagiarism of any form will result in an automatic failure of the paper and most likely possible failure for the entire course. Be sure that you reference the writing tools I have posted for you on Blackboard. Al at Purdue is always a very good source for this. Again, you may use outside sources, but they need to be from a credible, qualified source. So no Wikipedia, no Ask.com, no anything like that. This is an academic research paper. Absolutely no late work will be accepted because I try to give you a lot of time to work on this, so I actually have a very limited window in which to grade. Now, please be sure to reference my comments on your first essay. As you notice, I will make some comments in the paper itself, but most of the comments are in the attached rubric, the grading rubric, so make sure you look at that. One note, please remember to check your papers for grammatical errors. The rules of English composition and grammar are never optional. There were many grammatical mistakes on the first paper. So please make sure you are proofreading this. As always, if you have any questions, concerns, feel free to email me. Again, I highly recommend you email me your thesis statement to make sure you're on the right track. Remember, though, I do not read entire drafts over email. The reason is it's just not fair. This class has over 40-some students in it, and if I get 40 emails the night before the papers due, 40 drafts, there's no possible way I can read all those. Now, if you would like to go over your draft, email me. We can make an appointment. My office is on Stevenson on U of L's campus. We can find a date and time that'll work, and we can sit down and we can go through your paper. And even if you want to meet about anything, if you're just not quite sure about the prompt, you need some help getting started, absolutely shoot me an email and we can discuss this. So any questions or concerns you have, email me or let's set up an appointment. Again, please make sure to read the prompt thoroughly. Look at my comments on your past papers, and remember, this is not a personal response. This is much different than the first paper. This is a critical analysis. You're making a clear thesis, and you're supporting that through the work. If you have any questions, please let me know.